awesome privilege and pleasure to introduce our speaker. And I think of the name Isom, I think of the word awesome. I don't know why I connect the two words. I've only known Ike a very, very short period of time. And I've read part of the book, and in reading part of the book, I've learned a lot about the man. And it's all I can say is just a pleasure, Ike, to introduce you as our speaker this morning. And as, Mike's still. Go ahead. As you all know, Ike is a decorated World War II veteran and the pioneer, as it says on the card, of the NASA space program.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. You're very kind to me.
And you gave me the pleasure to introduce some of your family that made their way here today, Ike.
Sure, go ahead.
First of all, Ike's wife, Catherine, if she's still here, she's over there. Ike's wife, Catherine. And his lovely daughter, Amy, is right there. And his granddaughter, Lindsay. And sons, the distinguished Scott Rigell, former representative of the state of Virginia, and son David. And there's also grandchildren and granddaughters as well here. So I hope I didn't miss anybody. I'm a rookie here, so it looks like we might have a great-grandchild here too. So with that, I'm going to leave it to you, Ike.
Thanks, Tom. These first remarks are really not in my script. I wasn't aware of the video, so that's my speech. Thanks for coming. You know, one thought running through my mind now. Well, this reminds me of my first day at boot camp. What in the world am I doing here? And Pastor David over here always calls me Spaceman, so I don't want to let him down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, we have liftoff. Okay, some little thoughts here. You know, what in the world does a 96-year-old codger like me stand up before such an awesome audience as this? Good that I'm facing this moment, just sort of boggles my mind. And on behalf of all my family here, we just appreciate your presence here this morning. We're really humbly honored that you're here. Another comment that really wasn't in my thing, but when Lee Miller arranged this, set this up, he told me about 25 minutes. But I wanted to make sure you got your money's worth, so I figured about 2 hours I could cover what's. Then I just happened to notice on my watch, it's almost time for my morning now. So, I gotta cut this short. I'm gonna tell you another thing. When you're 96, in some years, few years, most of you, it'll be quite a few years. One thing I found that you're gonna do, now you please remember this. First thing you do in the morning, you get the newspaper and you look in the obituary, see if your name is there. If it's not, you look around to see if some of your friend's name is there so you can attend the funeral. And I put a lot of emphasis on this because one of the favorite philosophers is Yogi Berra, you know, the Hall of Fame baseball player. And Yogi says, if you don't attend other people's funerals, they won't attend yours. I want you to remember that, okay? Now I gotta get serious. At the encouragement of a family years ago, I started these chronicles with rough handwritten notes that which my daughter Amy, where's Amy, transcribed to her computer. And then we graduated to a little tape recorder. But the bulk of the contents of the book, or really I did, was voice recognition software. And then my son, Scott here, decided to take the first manuscript to one of his friends, which was the owner of a book publishing company. And a few days later, I received a contract authorizing them to market this publication on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Now that was their idea, it wasn't mine. So I thought, what have I got to lose? So I signed it. Now fortunately then, my granddaughter Lindsay, right here, came on the scene, and she has been absolutely tremendous. Absolutely amazing. She's done all the editing and the communication with the publisher. Without Amy and Lindsay's dedication to this project, their general advice and their guidance and organizational skills, these chronicles would never have happened. Now, I learned something in the book publishing business. I had nothing to do with the cover. The cover I submitted to them apparently wasn't politically correct, so the cover you see, I had nothing to do with it. And then I learned, when I learned it was going on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, I had to make a few minor changes. I had several pages in there of words of wisdom from my family, and I thought maybe about deleting those. Then I came up with a zinger. Why not just leave them in and consider anyone who reads this book as part of my family? And you know, the bigger a family is, the better it is. So I left those words of wisdom in there, and one of them I recall, and they says, always keep the child within you. A child laughs many times a day, an adult not near as much. And also, never stop learning, never go to bed angry. Now let me talk a little bit about the Great Depression. I was born in a small town of Slocum, Alabama in 1923. My father and grandfather owned a general store where they sold everything from groceries, dry goods, buggy whips, and wagons. My father died from pneumonia when I was 2 years old. I was 6 years old in 1929 when the stock market collapsed, beginning of the Great Depression. Now, all my growing up years, until I left home at the age of 18, was in the middle of the Great Depression. And when I graduated from high school in 1941, the employment rate was hovering around 12 or 14%. It had been as high as 25%. Now, I've studied a lot of history, and during this period, the only way we came out of the Great Depression in 42 was when we turned on our vast industrial complex to produce war materials. I put on my economist hat to get all those good answers. I read so many different versions of that. Now, President Roosevelt was considered our savior during this period, but in my assessment, he failed in that area. And I'll back this up with this quote from Henry Morgenthau. He was Secretary of Treasury under President Roosevelt and a close friend. And here's his words. We have tried spending money. We're spending more than we ever spent before, and it does not work. And I have just one interest. And if I'm wrong, somebody else can have my job. I want to see this country prosper. I want to see people get a job. I want to see people get enough to eat. We've never made good on our promises. I'll say after 8 years of this administration, we have just as much unemployment as we started, an enormous debt to boot. What a lesson there, I think. You know, I sum up my life in the Great Depression by quoting Will Rogers. I lived in the Great Depression, but I was never depressed. Now, this old country boy going to boot camp. I graduated from high school in 1941. No prospects for a job and no money for college. I enlisted in the Marine Corps, and a lot of these details are described in the book. Here I am, an 18-year-old country boy, never traveled over 125 miles from home. I'm on my way to San Diego, California to boot camp. And just putting it very mildly, I was in for a big cultural shock. I've got some hearing problems now, and I relate that to the DIs talking in my ear. About 195 decibels. I served in the Marines throughout World War II and spent over 3 years of this overseas. I participated in 5 major battles: Midway, Roy Namor, the Marshalls, Saipan, and Iwo Jima. Now, some thoughts on these, I'll describe these in the book, but you know, like the one on Roy Namor, we lost, I think, around 200 men, 500. In those days, that would be considered like casualty. Well, let me tell you, every casualty, there's a gold star mother. So it ain't like casualties in any situation. When the war ended in 1945, we were on Maui, preparing for the assault on the Japanese mainland. My personal experience in all these is described in the book. I'll only mention briefly 2 personal events. The first one is on Saipan. That was a pretty tough campaign. There's a jump bugle back on the table back there. I got that when I was running the telephone line to one of the forward units. And those of you who've been in combat, you know, sometimes there's confusion. The front line is not always like this, it's irregular. And I got a little confused, and I took our team on a shortcut trying to get back to my base before dark. And ended up through territory that we had not been in before. When I got that bugle, it was nicely polished, tasseled very red. But it's a lengthy story on that. You'll have to go to the book to see that. The other event I'll mention was on Iwo Jima. I came back to our command post one evening after a mission, and our command post at that time was an abandoned Japanese anti-aircraft position, and all to the one room underground was where the crew slept. And when I came out, one of my buddies said, "You need to go in there and talk to Tony, or see Tony." And Tony was a tough Marine, Italian kid from the Bronx. So I crawled through the tunnel. The room was dimly lit, but I could see Tony's face plainly. He had his helmet on, and he was wearing a poncho. It had been raining. And he was shaking violently, had a blank stare on his face. I said, "Tony, how you doing?" No answer, just still violently shaking. And just a blank stare. So I came out of the tunnel, and one of the guys told me a corpsman was on the way. And we'd been under some pretty heavy artillery fire all that day. Now my message here is this, for this situation. Not all the wounds bleed. You know, we've seen a lot of that from Vietnam, guys in Iraq, Afghanistan, and some of those wounds are harder to heal than physical wounds. I never knew if Tony suffered any long-range problems or not. Since I'm a history buff, I'll offer some thoughts in the book on the events starting the war, how we conducted the war, and how the war ended, especially in the rationale for dropping the atomic bomb. I'm telling you, President Truman was one of my heroes. And numerous times in these writings, I refer to the presence of divine providence. I carried a little Bible. I didn't read as much as I should, but throughout the war, especially I often looked at Psalms 27, first few verses. Sometimes I want to look at that. I'm going to leave the war and come back to it a little later. I'm going into civilian life now. When I was discharged as a sergeant in October of 1945, I did not have the foggiest clue about what my future would be. I had really not expected to be discharged so soon. But still, I had a perfect peace about my situation. I really wasn't worried. If you had told me then that the next few days I would be enrolled at Georgia Tech under the GI Bill, would have a job that winter working German prisoners in an army base outside of Atlanta, I didn't even know we still had German prisoners then. And even more surprising at that time, that I would be playing professional baseball in the old Alabama State League in the summer of 1946. If you'd told me all that then, I'd say you're crazy, maybe double crazy. But that's what happened. And kind of reminds me of one of Yogi Berra's classics. He says it's very hard to make predictions, especially about the future. I like to add that due to the large enrollment at Georgia Tech, getting full of GIs, I did not get to start college until the fall of 1946. That's the reason I got to play baseball that summer. At the end of World War II, we made a very smart move, bringing von Braun and his missile team to the U.S. At the end of World War II, Russia, British and French and us were trying to get the cream of the crop of the German experts in the space. One von Braun, they're biological experts in their synthetic fuels. They've been doing a lot of work in that. But then we brought them over here and we were doubly stupid from 45 to 50. We did not give them these talented people, any kind of meaningful program. Years later, von Braun, when we were behind the Russians, said we lost 5 years. At the end of World War II, our country turned our vast war industrial complex into building cars, radios, stoves, washing machines, silk hoses, Jim Walter's homes, and other goods that increased our standard of living. The Soviets did exactly the opposite. They devoted all their resources to maintaining a vast military force, especially in Eastern Europe, and going on rapidly into advancing their missile capabilities. And I say they derived their people of the resources that we were giving our people. And Captain and I can attest to that because 1982 we made our first trip to Russia, and they were living in very primitive situations. We would ride along those little villages, and I could tell from the size of transformers on the light poles that the houses could not have anything more than probably one light bulb. But in 1950, 2 major events occurred which got the attention of Washington as far as our missile and rocket business. Communist North Korea invaded South Korea. In the meantime, the Soviets had just exploded their first atomic bomb. Now, the Cold War was on. It was very clear the Soviets planned to dominate the world. They told us that when we visited the country. That was when the Department of Defense moved von Braun his team to Huntsville, Alabama, and authorized the Redstone program. I graduated from Georgia Tech in 1950. After a short stint with the TVA, I started my space career in Huntsville with Army Ballistic Missile Agency, headed by General McDarius and Werner von Braun. I was a member of the first Redstone launch team when we launched the Redstone from Cape Canaveral out here in 1953, and I'm telling you, Cape Canaveral then and Cocoa Beach and Taos were nothing like it is today. I can't exaggerate the mosquitoes. Let me say a little bit about our space team in the early days. We were all young. In fact, most of the guys were for their first job. And another thing, and that was just the culture of the nation. Don't read anything political from me in this. I'm just quoting facts. We were all young. We were all white males, no females. And let me say, the space program today is a wonderful platform for minorities and women. And this is tremendous, but back then, I'm just telling you the way it was. Of course, there's one advantage in being young in the experimental type work. Because when you're young, you're not afraid of failure. Take a little child, and we've got a little great-granddaughter across the street from us. We watch her learn how to walk. She tumbles, and we all laugh. She doesn't get hurt. Doesn't bother her. She gets up and goes again. That's the way when you're young. And I've observed, and if you look at it, you will too, that as people in the organization get older, they pick up a lot of baggage. Just try to move after you lived in a place 20 years. Now, let me give you a little bit of history on space. You know, our country has about 400 years of good history, and the benchmark for that is Jamestown, 1607. But our country has only about 65 years of space history. And I would say the benchmark for that is August 1953, when we, as I mentioned, we launched that first Redstone. Now the highlights of that first 40 years in space are recorded in this book, and some personal stories that you won't find in any history book. And some of the top events, I can just only hit the top parts here. October 4th, 1957, the world changed. We heard beep, beep, beep. Sputnik was in orbit. We in the space business were devastated, very angry. We had a Jupiter C rocket in Huntsville that was capable of putting a satellite in orbit even months before the Soviets. General McDarius and von Braun had repeatedly gone to Washington for permission to launch this satellite, and they repeatedly got absolutely not. Now, the country had decided to put a satellite up, but well, let me say this, if you want to screw something up, get a committee. Sometimes committees are good, but they got a committee to study the options. They studied three. Don't have time to go into them here, but they came out with a super stupid decision. It cost us being first in space. Let me say our little team out here was very prolific in the 1950s. We finally got permission in late 67 to launch our satellite, and we did in January 58. We launched our first Free World's Explorer 1 satellite, which was really a great day. Also in the 50s, we developed the Jupiter intermediate range ballistic missile, missile. We were in a tight Cold War race with Russia at that time. And our Jupiter missile was later deployed in Turkey and Italy. In fact, the Turkish and British, Turkey and the Italian team would come over to Huntsville, Alabama and go to school, and their graduation would be come down to the Cape and launch a Jupiter under our supervision. But the point I'm making on Jupiter missile, it was a pawn in 1962 in the Cuban Missile Crisis. And I think the present generation probably don't have any clue about how close we were to Armageddon. The Russians had atomic missiles with their finger on the trigger down in Cuba. But it was not revealed until the 90s that our Jupiter missiles were a crucial negotiation, because in Turkey they were on the Russian border aimed at Moscow. Now again in 1961, April, Soviets embarrassed us again. They launched Gagarin low Earth orbit, a great achievement. You look at it like this: the Soviets were demonstrating to the third world, look what we communists are doing, and not capitalist people are not capable of keeping up with us. I mean, that was a very devastating thing. Now, 3 weeks later, President Kennedy, well, first we launched Shepard on that 150-mile downrange, a suborbital thing, and that was in the space world, that was a small thing as far as achievement, since Russia had been in orbit, but it was super important, because if we had failed that 150-mile suborbital thing and the Russians had a man up there, we'd look very, very stupid. And also 3 weeks later is when President Kennedy made that famous speech, May the 25th, 61. We're going to the moon, we're going in this decade. This guy was out and wondered, does that guy know what he's talking about? You know, we went overnight from one little operation, like a mom and pop grocery store. The next day we were like Walmart. It was an awesome challenge we faced then. Had to find a moon port, and let me tell you, it wasn't automatic we're gonna have Merritt Island. Kingsport, Georgia was a prime location. Anytime you get money flowing around, you get the political aspects. So Dr. Kurt Davis, our leader out here, finally convinced them, let's buy Merritt Island and keep the advantages we have here. You know, and fortunately we had the management talent at that time in NASA to accomplish this tremendous task. And in 8 short years, we had man's first footprint on another heavenly body. Now in today's world, you could never accomplish anything like that. In fact, you couldn't even buy part of Merritt Island in 8 years now. You know, it just amazes me even today how successful we were in the Apollo program, because you got to consider these things. That huge rocket spacecraft was built with 1960 technology. We had relays, stepping switches, rotating machinery, and other equipment with moving parts. That is much more unreliable than today's solid state equipment. During this time, I was the chief engineer and deputy director of launch vehicle operations, and I was honored to make the flight readiness assessment to the review team for every man to launch in the Apollo program. So it was kind of rewarding. You know, I've heard from a number of prominent people that if Soviets had beaten us to the moon, the old Soviet empire would be stronger today than it was then. I've read quite a bit about the Soviet program in those days, and it's very interesting. Now, I retired in NASA in 1981, many years ago. At that time, I was head of the shuttle payloads and unmanned launch operations, and our prime payload at that time was in work. It was a Space Lab, and it was being developed by the European Space Agency. And that was a very interesting program working with those Europeans. We had to make quite a few trips over to Europe, primarily Bremen, Germany. After NASA, I went to work immediately for USBI. That's a subsidiary of United Technology. I retired in '91 as the Vice President of USBI Florida Operations. Now I'm going on my retirement years. Catherine and I both look forward to our retirement. We both have a strong passion for travel, both domestic and foreign. And much of our travels actually were for a purpose. We made 3 trips into China smuggling Bibles. One trip our daughter was with us. Sometimes I get a little fancy, should have done that. On our second trip to Russia in 1991, after Glasnost, we made this trip with a group from Campus Crusade for Christ, and we passed out Bibles in Moscow, including Red Square. And 8 years earlier when we were there, I could never dream of passing out a Bible in Red Square. That was just beyond comprehension. And we visited other cities in Russia, and I was just amazed how eager those people. We had a shoulder bag in Red Square, and you hand them out, and people were getting them out of your bag. They couldn't wait for you to hand them one. And at that time, we were active in an organization called Full Gospel Business Men's Fellowship, and we attended international conventions in Hong Kong, Rio de Janeiro, and Montreal, as well as some domestic cities. And one great trip we enjoyed was we flew the Concorde from Washington to London and returned to New York on the QE2. We broke the sound barrier flying at Mach 2 at 55,000 feet. That was a nice experience. But we loved our RV world, especially some of our trip with our grandchildren. We met such great people at RV travels that's why we're out here at Great Outdoors. Bunch of great people here. Some of you that don't live out here ought to consider it. And after retirement, I had one last opportunity to serve my country. A number of years ago, the NASA administrator asked Chris Kraft, he's the retired director of Johnson Space Flight Center, to form a panel and give a recommendation of how NASA to operate more efficiently in their manned flight programs. And I was asked to serve on this committee, and it was really gratifying to have some top people, including Frank Borman and other retired CEOs from aerospace industry, and it was good to see NASA accepted our recommendations. And I had another interesting trip in 2012. I was invited by the Greatest Generational Foundation to join a small group to visit our battle sites, Saipan, Tenia, and Iwo Jima. And each of us veterans had a student to accomplish us. This was a very well organized program. We had students from Ohio State University, 2 of them, 2 professors plus the students. And they were getting college credit for this. They had a daily blog. They would go with us and get our stories at various locations. And we really bonded with these people. My escort was Nick Brill, and I invited he and his father down for a fishing trip a few months after we got back. And I remember one event on Iwo Jima. We joined a special group called the Military Tour Groups, and had a big ceremony. Had 2 tents, the Japanese one, we had one, and it was in the middle of the island. And I looked down at the beach, and I said, Nick, I'd really like to go down there, but I don't think I can make it back up here. He said, I'd like you going if I got to take you on my back. He was a pretty big guy. So I said, let's go. So we made it back up, and another privilege, I got to go up on Mount Sarabaki and see, like the Japanese looked down on us. When I was there, I didn't I didn't get up on Mount Sarabaki. And another big point, when we came into Iwo Jima, the pilot did a figure eight, so either side you get a view. And what shocked us all, we looked down on a green island. When we were there, 45, there's nothing green. It looked like hell, it smelled like hell, the sulfur fumes coming out of the ground. It was hell. The trip was very moving. Now there's a story in this book, and it's on the hardcover of the hardback book, and it says that you're a survivor. I can't go into all the details of that year, I don't have time, but it has to do with a story concerning Iwo Jima, after Iwo Jima, probably, actually, and it was an unanswerable question. Well, some survive and some don't. And when you get to that, it brings another question. If you're a survivor, what's your purpose? It brings on a third question. Are you fulfilling that purpose?
Amen.
This question has been on my mind daily since I started writing these chronicles. And I'm saying I'm concerned about the world in which our grandchildren, great-grandchildren will live. We live in a dangerous world. The war is so cotton-picking senseless. I unquote General Eisenhower and General Sherman on that. Unfortunately, wars are not limited to the battlefield. Civilians suffer tremendously. There's human misery all over the world today because of war. And it seems like in all wars, some soldier, sailor, or Marine can express from the heart more vividly what war is all about than professional journalists. Now I've got two examples here. One is a poem from World War I. It's called In Flanders Field, the Poppies Grow. It has to do with the battle over in Belgium. The other is from a Marine in a foxhole on Iwo Jima. Esther Amy and I were going through this material, and Scott was there, and I had trouble going through it, and she suggested Scott read this. So Scott's going to read these. These are in the book.
This is a short reading from In Flanders Fields. We are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Field. This is a reading from a foxhole Marine on Iwo Jima. At last it's quiet on Iwo, at last the battle is won, and we who are left say a prayer of thanks because our job is done. In the shadows of Mount Suribachi, where crosses mark our dead, we hear the names of our buddies and stand with bended head. We recall good times together and the sacrifices shared, but we can't see why they had to die while the rest of us were spared. So we say to you truly, our hearts are filled with pain, but we know some distant day we shall all meet again. And if one should ask me how I know, I would just reply, we all met God on Iwo, not just those who had to die. So to our loved ones back home, hold your head with pride, for they are all true heroes, those who fought and died. And to all mankind throughout our land, let us not forget their pain. This time, let's build a lasting peace, so their death will not be in vain.
Okay, Scott, you got the poster. I want to say something about this on the cover of the book. This is Going Ashore at Iwo Jima. All these guys are going forward. Like this poem said, some are not gonna see the sunset. Some of these guys are not gonna see the sunrise. Some are gonna leave the island on a stretcher. That's what war is all about. Behind everyone that doesn't come back, again, I mentioned there's a Gold Star mother. War is senseless. And we need to do all we can. I don't care what your political philosophy is. We all need together to try to keep our country strong. We got enemies out there, and when they see weakness, they're gonna pounce. We live in a dangerous world, but I like to be optimistic. We serve a sovereign God, and He is still in control. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Be seated. On behalf of the family and my father and my mother. So he didn't cry, so I'm gonna do it. So.
You can go, David. It's all good.
So I've lived my whole life, obviously, with the blessing of mom and dad. 63 years. I read two versions of the book. First version that came out, I don't know, it was only 400 pages, and he said, I got so much more to do, and he kept going. And then they did, I think the current and final one, is it final, Dad? Are you done now? I mean, hey,
He said,
he's,
"Is it final? Are you done now?"
I mean, he's 96 and going strong. He might do my post 100-year addendum.
There you go.
And I would look forward to that. So even though my brother and sisters have spent our entire lives with the blessing of them, I heard stuff today that I did not know. And I look forward to reading the final book. I'm getting it today, as many of you will. Anyway, but so we do thank you all for being here. It's incredible. What you will see most importantly in this book is not the life story of my father, as interesting as that is. It is his commitment to, his devotion to his Heavenly Father. Amen. That is the preeminent theme of this book.
Amen.
So from, picking cotton in Slocum, Alabama, to being the chief engineer on getting men to the moon, he's giving all honor and glory to his Heavenly Father.
Amen.
And that's what he is encouraging each of you to do. That's what he's encouraging you to do. So, he wants to honor y'all. We do thank all of y'all for being here. You're all special, but with all due respect, and I wish I was one of them. I have very few regrets in my life, but one of them is that I did not serve our country in uniform. Special honor and a gift from my father, funded by my brother. Got to say that, not that my dad wouldn't have done it, but Scott got out ahead of him and said, you know what, we're going to give this away. Okay, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Dad. For all of y'all that served in World War II, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, anywhere, anytime in World War II. We want to honor you. We want to give you, we've got hardback and softback versions of the final book. We're going to give it to you. So we've got Scott and a great-grandchild. We got Nathan and others are going to, we want you to raise your hand right now. Thank you. Raise your hand. You're going to get a free book right now. Anybody who served in World War II? All right, James. Got one gentleman over here. Gentleman over here. Anybody else? Okay. All right, we're going to keep on going because we've got the Korean War. Korean War. Anybody served in the Korean conflict, the Korean War? Got a gentleman right here, right there, right there.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all so much. The Forgotten War, Vietnam, we're not forgetting that. You're darn sure not forgetting that. Okay, James, y'all hold your hands up. We got the books. We're going to keep going until we run out. So, hold on. We're going to get to you. They're reloading back there.
What does that mean?
That means books today.
Does that mean service during Vietnam or not going?
We're going to get to all those who did not serve actually in combat. That's the last category, so we're going to get to you. But we're talking about combat veterans at the moment. So, gentlemen. All right, I can see we're down to the softbacks now, but we're going to keep going until we give them out, until we run out. There you go, Nathan. Awesome. Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right, we've got Iraq, Afghanistan, and all other conflicts. There have been others that we don't hear so much about, but for those of you that were in them, very real. Iraq, Afghanistan, all of our conflicts. Anybody? Okay, we got James, you got yours. Yeah, that's his grandson, James, served in Afghanistan. Okay, and now all who wore the uniform, conflict, war or not. Holy smokes. Oh my, we're definitely running out. Okay, that is awesome. I doubt we have that many. Okay, we're gonna hand them out until we run out. And wow.
And take their names if you didn't get one, and we'll make sure they get one.
Okay, so this is what we're gonna do. Thank you, Amy. Someone,
There's index cards on the table.
okay, there's index cards on the table. If you don't get a book and you're raising your hand right now, write your name down. We will send you a book. Okay, so you are gonna get one. So I see them still unloading the boxes back there, so maybe we'll have enough.
And Dad wants to see if they would grab this.
Okay, Dad will be here to sign if you wish. He'll be here staying afterwards today. All right, they're still coming. That's awesome. Yes.
Recognize everybody with us.
And we're going to recognize you all with a round of applause. Thank you all so much, all who served our country, wore our country's uniform. Thank you. Now, after standing in the presence of you brave men and soldiers, I feel guilty getting one for free, so I think I'm going to have to buy mine off of Amazon because I did not serve. But for the rest of you, me, and if there's anyone that almost seems like there's no one that didn't serve somewhere, there is Amazon. It is on Amazon. So anyway, again, on behalf of my father and family, we thank you so much. Now, did everybody get one?
I think so.
Wow, that's awesome.
We have one more,
One
a
more.
couple more. Do we have a couple more, Chris, in the back?
Okay. All right, so if you didn't, write your name on the card, give it to my dad or mom or me or Scott afterwards today. Thank you.
Good work, Dad. Every veteran got one.
Can we have a round of applause again for Ike and your family?